Some civilizations never died off because they were never human in the first place. Envision a city that shines, a frozen sunrise. There are towers made from some sort of translucent material that reveals a humming noise during dusk, while roads are designed in a spiral form, much like a seashell made from light. This is Keshira, an archaeologically lost city that existed under the desert sands, now hidden under Yemen. It is a non-anthropogenic structure, meaning that none of these features manifest any kind of human construction, and it's assumed that this is a non-issue. Their fingertips, if it can even be called that, is the elongated hexagonal print, which is far too uniform to be from random tools. Their skeletal system? Non-existent. Their footprints? Triple notiated, deeper than what would be expected from human weight. Envision a species of lanky, slender beings rippling their way through the air. In regional lore, their name is the Ekshul, or Glass Ones, with the capability of carving stone like it was Play-Doh and speaking by modulating their body tone. But how did the Glass Ones come into existence? According to the story, they did not evolve, they condensed. Thousands of years ago, when the Earth's crust was thin in that area, a natural quartz line started oscillating constantly as a result of magnetic storms. Apparently, a lightning bolt struck the same spot for several years, and somehow a self-organized structure manifested in the lighting, intelligent lighting that chose to walk. It took centuries to evolve these crystallized thoughts into a way to imitate life, and create crystal cities not to live in, but to resonate along. Well, you might find it quite beautiful. The archaeologists did too, until their camp radios began to tune into whispering signals when they excavated too far. Each time someone harvested a slice of quartz from this site, it shifted to pitch, as if the very land was wincing. Nobody knows what doomed them. Maybe their vibrations somehow went out of tune. Maybe the emergence of humanity disrupted their vibrations. Maybe, as some theories continue to assert, they never actually ended but simply tuned into a signal that fatally ignores us. After all, if the wind of the desert hums an A-flat, whose imitation do you think it's imitating? And if you were frightened to see a civilization composed of crystal, wait until you experience what occurs when a piece of clay starts recalling things. Somewhere deep inside Siberia's north is Lake Tauva, a crater lake with a greenish-black color that smells of iron. Divers say that in the water, sound waves do not bounce back. Instead, they simply fade away. The Breathless ones are what the locals call the spirits that haunt the area's crater lake of Tauva. They are the remains of a forgotten people who had abandoned the ability to breathe. Their saga starts as an accident of progress. About 30,000 years ago, the human race, insofar as it was still human, found a way to survive the cold by deliberately reducing their metabolism to nearly nothing. They employed this strategy as a means of surviving the great winter that engulfed their valleys. For a time, it paid off. The Tauvans developed rituals whereby they breathed in the mineral fog rising from the vents on the lakes, which made their lungs idle but their wits active. But then came the mutation. After this many centuries of this tradition, their children were born without lungs at all. Their rib cages were smooth as marble, but they were still mobile and conversed by skin membrane tremors. Envision a people who were bald and gray and human-like, and whose sustenance was absorbed from their surface pores as trace elements from stone surfaces. When oxygen came back to the planet in bigger waves during the climatic shifts, the bodies of the Breathless ones started to crack under the constant pressure. Legends have it that the priests of the Breathless ones assembled at the frozen lake and quietly formed a ring around themselves before sinking slowly into the water. Not to drown, but to dissolve completely. Nothing was left behind but the glowing ash and the lethal silvery scum. The Russian explorers who stumbled back upon Tauva all those centuries ago have identified symmetrical patterns of bone residue along the floor of the lake, and any attempt at deeper diving resulted in a catastrophic failure of equipment. Methane pockets is the official explanation. The Breathless ones humming softly beneath the muck, waiting for the foolhardy to come close enough to suck wind, is the alternate explanation. Because who needs air when they can survive on pure existential dread? Then, a civilization that chose to make death an option, and consistently proved it for way too long. It is where civilizations end their contribution to society. The Kutra made it their construction material. Thousands of years ago, in an archipelago that is today part of the South Pacific, an entire society died out, leaving behind what looked like structures composed of coral. Scientists later uncovered the limited, horrible truth. It wasn't coral, it was collagen, preserved in sea salt. And the architecture? Biomorphic, tendrils resembling muscle tissue, bones suggesting vertebrae, and something eerily suggestive of hip bones. Kuyutra's tale begins with sickness. Archaeological evidence reveals they were a small people, a tribe of humanity whose numbers were decimated by a fungal plague that consumed their organs alive. In a desperate attempt to survive, their medicine men began a symbiotic experiment, attempting to integrate their bodies with growing coral, and it succeeded almost too well. Their sick bodies were now cities in a state of lifeless yet biologically alive stasis, their hearts barely pulsing with a slight energy signature to power the cities. Over the generations, the Kutra abandoned entombing their dead altogether. They raised them up into infrastructure, pathways of jawbone arcs, doorways that closed like eyelids. They were known to whisper nightly, cycling the air. It was an elder's claim that the first human uploaded their memory into the coral flesh via a ritual that entailed submerging half of their skull in seawater, singing until their skin merged with the sea. The coming of the final storm, which may have been a massive tidal wave, saw the entire town transformed into a hard pink reef. Sonar signals, according to divers, emit weird, human-like screams. A submarine engineer quit his dive in mid-course because he heard a distinct beat answering his sonar signal. Kutra is considered to be evidence of ancient bioengineering, say modern scholars. We refer to it as Thousand Pulse Reef, say locals to each other. The rest of the world knows it as absolutely not vacation material. But if you don't like the architecture of veins, don't sweat it. The next house just used flesh, okay? The flesh of their own. All civilizations will inevitably decline and fall. The Namar had a personal experience with that. Their ruins exist in the Jordanian desert and form spirals that get progressively smaller as they approach the center. As if the architects constructed the buildings with the end in mind and worked backward. They constructed buildings in reverse order. Huh? Just observe the remains they left behind and note that their architectural structures formed spirals which progressively decreased in size as they reached the center. As if they constructed the Tablets of Namar, the tale of a series of tables, a means by which the priests were capable of unwinding time within a holy sanctuary. They had merely stumbled upon the tablets, which consisted of a mineral within the stones of the structure itself that was sensitive to magnetic polarity change. They were rewinding time itself a mere second or two, but literally. The Namar took advantage of this like preschoolers with mallets. They crafted rituals where they incorporated events together, reversal of aging, echoes, rebuilding of materials right before they fell apart. And then animals found themselves caught up in these loops, creating repulsive hybrids, half-born deers, insects stuck in wing positions for centuries. But some estimates put the Namar population aging backwards out of existence, with half the population reverting to the fetal stages before they turned to dust. The most chilling discovery? Bones posed mid-action, destined for exits at either side of the temple, some charred from the inside out, as if their bodies were attempting to outrun their own clock. In current-day Namar, sometimes its dunes yield up artifacts that seem as if they've never been touched by the passage of time. Utensils that never rusted, fabrics as soft as brand-new textiles. It's as if they ought to be obliterated and yet persist anyway. One theory for geoscientists is that these ruins lie atop aberrant geomagnetic fault lines. For those who prefer a more mystical interpretation, it's only that Namar is still playing and doing it so well that its extinction can never finish. So next time you lose track of time, remember this. Some cultures have built their entire economy on doing the same thing. You think your time management skills are poor, but perhaps you still believe in reality. Well, let's rectify that with civilization number 5. That was the one where humanity was the experimental species. What lies beneath the driest desert on the planet could be what made it so arid. There are enormous, pale, geometrical depressions in the shape of eyes, in the configuration of a spiral and miles long, evident in satellite images from the Atacama region. According to folklore, this is where the Makar, the watchers from beneath the earth, below stone, below time, would be found. It's not a metaphor. Miners digging too deep into the nitrate plains of the 19th century Earth exposed gigantic caverns lined with black glass as polished as a mirror. But the walls are no natural formations. They are layers of sediment that have been melted together and impressed with microgrooves that hold perfectly formed binary codes. Not a human language. Microgrooves are believed to be of a biological nature, remains of natural tentacles. No carbon is found in the samples, so all attempts to carbon date them are futile. The Makar myth presents a dizzying image. Indefinite beings with inverted shadows that shaped primal man from dust while erasing their own existence. They weren't human offspring, but rather a case study. But if the Makar were to become displeased, they withdrawn the breath, thus creating droughts and world resets. The disturbing thing? These similarities appear in the lore of ancient civilizations on 5 different continents. The same imagery. Eyes in the desert, watchers below ground. The word Makar, or close variations of it showing up in unrelated languages. Coincidence? Perhaps. Or perhaps coincidence holds press conferences in ancient Sumerian. The last known Makar site was closed off in 1987 when an archaeological crew's equipment picked up a heartbeat pattern of vibration beneath their track. They closed off the cavern and deemed it unstable, and a crewman would only acknowledge the incident when asked about it later by repeating, "They're still adjusting us." If that's the case, then humanity is not necessarily the most significant species on the planet, but probably just the software fix that the last civilization put out there before leaving the planet to its own devices, effectively ghosting it. Well, what do we do with this menagerie of sparkling glass spirits, silent breathing bodies, coral-centered brains, time flow reversing architects, and underground editors of humanity? Easy answer: panic secretly, then dismiss it as mere myth. But ultimately, beneath every strata of history, there is one tricky question that it is loath to consider, let alone answering. The problem of why so many ancient civilizations behave so unhuman in terms of their design, their biology, and their physics. Perhaps it is precisely because they did not. Perhaps they were merely training wheels of existence, a failed blueprint that someone more skilled eventually improved upon in us. What scared you the most? The humming crystals, the time-traveling city, or the thought of the superior life form watching you even now, this very instant, through your Wi-Fi connection? Once again, thank you very much for watching. I'm Solomon, and I'm very intelligent. Well, until next time, bye.